Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something real today. Quitting. Now, I know what you're thinking. Ain't nobody supposed to quit. Winners never quit. Quitters never win. That's what they told us, right? Well, let me tell you something. Sometimes quitting is the smartest thing you can do. See, the problem is we've been trained to think that holding on, no matter what, is a sign of strength. But you ever seen somebody holding on to a burning rope? How strong they look while their hands are blistering up? Ain't nothing strong about staying in pain when you got the option to move. The trick is knowing the difference between quitting and letting go. Quitting is giving up on yourself. Letting go is realizing that thing ain't for you anymore. And some of y'all right now, I know you sitting there looking cute, but some of y'all been holding on to jobs, relationships, friendships, dreams, and even bad habits that you know you should have let go of a long time ago. So how do you know when it's time to quit? I'll give you 3 signs. One, it's draining you, not growing you. Look, if something in your life is draining you more than it's developing you, it might be time to step back. If you go to work and your soul leaves your body before you even clock in, that's a sign. If you're in a relationship and the only reason you stay is because you're comfortable, that's not love, that's fear. Anything that doesn't challenge you, elevate you, or give you joy is not meant for you in the long run. 2, when you're only holding on because of time invested. Oh, this is a big one. Some people stay in things just because they put too much time into it. I've been here 10 years. I can't leave now. Listen, if you've been making the wrong turn for 10 years, does that mean you should keep going? No. You're supposed to turn around and get back on track. Time wasted is time already gone. But the future, you still got control over that. 3, when you know deep down it ain't for you. You ever had that feeling? That little voice that says, this ain't it. But then you ignore it, you try to justify it. Maybe if I just try harder. Maybe if I just wait longer. Nah, God gave you that feeling for a reason. Stop fighting against the truth you already know. Listen, life is too short to be stuck unhappy and uninspired. Sometimes the biggest blessings behind the door you're scared to close. So don't be afraid to walk away when something ain't serving you. Quitting the wrong thing is what makes room for the right thing. You don't owe nobody an explanation for choosing peace over pain, for choosing faith over fear, for choosing growth over stagnation. When it's time to let go, because the minute you do, something greater is already on its way. Now go on and get to what's waiting for you. That's got the motivational, humorous, and direct style you're looking for. Want any tweaks? When something in your life is draining you more than it's growing you, that's a sign that it's time to step back and reevaluate. Too often, people stay in situations that leave them exhausted mentally, emotionally, and even physically, simply because they feel like they're supposed to push through. Society has glorified the idea that struggling means you're strong, that the more you suffer, the more you'll eventually be rewarded. But that's not always true. There's a difference between working hard for something worthwhile and pouring yourself into something that's only taking from you. Think about a plant. A plant needs sunlight, water, and good soil to grow. If you take that same plant and put it in a dark room, give it no water, and stick it in dry, cracked dirt, it's going to struggle. It won't thrive, no matter how much it fights to survive. People are the same way. If you're in an environment that doesn't nourish you, doesn't feed your spirit, doesn't challenge you in a healthy way, then you're going to feel depleted all the time. And when something constantly drains you, it's telling you that it's no longer a source of growth. This happens in jobs, relationships, friendships, and even personal habits. A lot of people wake up every day, drag themselves out of bed, and go to a job that makes them miserable. They sit in traffic, cursing in the morning, get to work, and count the hours until they can leave. They're doing just enough to survive because the job isn't feeding their passion or their purpose, it's just paying their bills. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody has responsibilities and sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But if you spend years in a place that's sucking the energy out of you, leaving you too tired to pursue anything else, you have to ask yourself, what is this really doing for me? If it's only draining you and never developing you, then what's the real cost? Because let me tell you, your time and your peace of mind are more valuable than any paycheck. The same goes for relationships. Some of y'all are in relationships that leave you exhausted. You give and give and give, but you're not getting anything back. You support their dreams, but they don't support yours. You're always the one apologizing, always the one compromising, always the one bending so they don't break. And yet somehow you still feel like you're the one who's not doing enough. That's a clear sign you're in something that's draining you instead of growing you. Love in its purest form is supposed to be a two-way street. It's supposed to bring you peace, not just passion. It's supposed to make you feel safe, not just seen. And if a relationship is doing nothing but making you feel empty, then it's not the relationship for you. Friendships can be the same way. Some friendships are seasonal, but we try to make them permanent. You ever have a friend that you've known for years, but every time you're around them, you feel tired? Not because they talk too much, but because they bring a weight into your life. They always got drama, they always got complaints, they always need something, but when you need them, they're nowhere to be found. That's not friendship. That's an emotional burden disguised as loyalty. Just because you've known somebody for a long time doesn't mean they need to stay in your life forever. The people around you should inspire you, challenge you, and support you. If they're only bringing negativity and stress, then they are draining you. Even personal habits can be draining. Sometimes we're our own biggest problem. The way we think, the way we talk to ourselves, the way we procrastinate, the way we avoid change. These things hold us back more than anything external ever could. If you're constantly in your own head, doubting yourself, talking yourself out of things, allowing fear to control your decisions, then you are draining your own potential. A negative mindset will rob you of opportunities before they even present themselves. You can't grow if you're constantly feeding yourself reasons why you can't. Stress is another major indicator that something is draining you. When you're constantly on edge, constantly feeling like you can't catch a break, like the weight of everything is too heavy, your body is trying to tell you something. Stress doesn't just affect your mood, it affects your health. It can cause headaches, fatigue, insomnia, even serious health problems like high blood pressure. Your body will always send you signals when something isn't right. But too many people ignore those signs because they've convinced themselves that this is just how life is supposed to be. It's not. Life is hard sometimes, yes, but it shouldn't be a constant state of exhaustion. If something is draining you more than it's growing you, it's not meant to be in your life long. Another way to recognize when something is draining you is by looking at how it makes you feel about yourself. Does it bring you confidence or does it make you feel small? Does it empower you or does it make you second guess your worth? Anything that makes you feel less than who you truly are is not for you. Growth should make you feel challenged but inspired. It should push you out of your comfort zone but not make you question your value. If something or someone in your life constantly makes you feel like you're not good enough, then it's taking from you, not building you up. People stay in draining situations because they think leaving is harder. They think quitting means they've failed. But failure isn't leaving something that's hurting you. Failure is staying in it and letting it break you. The real challenge isn't holding on. It's having the courage to walk away. The truth is, we already know when something is bad for us. We feel it deep down. We might not want to admit it, but that feeling doesn't go away. It nags at us, shows up in quiet moments, and keeps reminding us that we deserve better. But fear keeps us stuck. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of what people will say. But let me ask you this, what's scarier, taking a step towards something better or staying in the same miserable place forever? You can always start over. You can always rebuild. But the longer you stay somewhere that's draining you, the less energy you'll have left to do it. When something is no longer serving you, it's okay to move on. If it's not growing you, it's only holding you back. A lot of people stay in situations not because they are happy, not because they are growing, but because they've already invested so much time. That's one of the biggest traps in life, the belief that because you've spent years on something, you have to see it through, even when it's no longer serving you. This happens in jobs, relationships, friendships, and personal goals. People tell themselves, I can't leave now. I've put too much time into this. But time spent is not the same as time well spent. Just because you've been somewhere a long time doesn't mean you need to stay there forever. Think about this. If you were driving and realized you were going the wrong way, would you keep going just because you've already driven 20 miles in the wrong direction? No, you'd turn around. But in life, people don't do that. They stay in careers they hate because they've already been there for a decade. They stay in relationships that make them miserable because they've already invested 5 years. They hold on to dreams that don't inspire them anymore because they've already spent so much time chasing them. But the truth is, time is the currency you can't get back. You can't rewind it, you can't replace it, but you can decide how you're going to spend it moving forward. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that quitting means failure. But what if holding on is the real failure? What if refusing to let go is what's actually keeping you stuck? There's a difference between persistence and stubbornness. Persistence is pushing through challenges to achieve something meaningful. Stubbornness is refusing to let go of something that no longer serves you. If you're holding on to something only because of the time you've spent on it, you're not being persistent. You're being trapped by your own past decisions. A lot of people stay in situations not because they are happy, not because they are growing, but because they've already invested so much time. That's one of the biggest traps in life. The belief that because you've spent years on something, you have to see it through, even when it's no longer serving you. This happens in jobs, relationships, friendships, and personal goals. People tell themselves, I can't leave now, I've put too much time into this. But time spent is not the same as time well spent. Just because you've been somewhere a long time doesn't mean you need to stay there forever. Think about this. If you were driving and realized you were going the wrong way, would you keep going just because you've already driven 20 miles in the wrong direction? No, you'd turn around. But in life, people don't do that. They stay in careers they hate because they've already been there for a decade. They stay in relationships that make them miserable because they've already invested 5 years. They hold on to dreams that don't inspire them anymore because they've already spent so much time chasing them. But the truth is, time is a currency you can't get back. You can't rewind it, you can't replace it, but you can decide how you're going to spend it moving forward. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that quitting means failure. But what if holding on is the real failure? What if refusing to let go is what's actually keeping you stuck? There's a difference between persistence and stubbornness. Persistence is pushing through challenges to achieve something meaningful. Stubbornness is refusing to let go of something that no longer serves you. If you're holding on to something only because of the time you've spent on it, you're not being persistent. You're being trapped by your own past decisions. People stay in careers they hate because they've already spent years in school, earned degrees, worked their way up the ladder. They tell themselves, I can't switch paths now. I've already put in too much work. But what good is success if it doesn't bring you joy? What good is stability if it comes at the cost of your happiness? Some of the most successful people in the world have completely changed their careers halfway through life. They realized that their time was too valuable to waste on something they no longer loved. Just because you started in one place doesn't mean you have to stay there forever. Relationships are another place where people stay too long simply because of the time they've already invested. They tell themselves, we've been together for years, I can't just walk away now. But the real question is, do you still see a future together? Are you happy? Are you growing? Are you still in love? Or are you just afraid of starting over? Staying in a relationship out of fear of wasted time is like keeping a book you don't enjoy just because you're already halfway through. If the story isn't good, if it doesn't make you feel anything, why keep reading? Friendships are the same way. Some friendships last a lifetime, and some are only meant for a season. But people hold on to friendships long after they've outgrown them because they feel guilty about letting go. Maybe you've known them since childhood. Maybe you've been through a lot together. Maybe you just don't want to hurt their feelings. But if the friendship is no longer adding value to your life, if it's only there because of history, then you have to ask yourself why you're still holding on. A real friendship should be built on more than just time. It should be built on mutual support, growth, and positivity. If that's missing, then the friendship is no longer serving you. Personal dreams and goals can also become traps when you're only chasing them because of the time you've already invested. Maybe you started a business that isn't working, but you don't want to quit because you've already spent years trying to make it succeed. Maybe you pursued a certain career path, but it doesn't excite you anymore, and you're afraid of changing directions. But if your heart isn't in it anymore, if you're only doing it because you've already spent time on it, then it's no longer about passion, it's about pride. And pride can keep you stuck in places you don't belong. The fear of wasted time is really the fear of admitting that we made the wrong choice. Nobody wants to feel like they've wasted years of their life. But the real waste isn't in walking away, it's in staying in something that no longer makes you happy. You have to learn to separate the past from the future. The time you've already spent is gone. It's done. You can't get it back. But you do have control over the time you have left. You can choose to keep investing it in something that drains you, or you can choose to redirect it towards something that fulfills you. One of the hardest things in life is knowing when to let go. People talk about commitment like it's always a good thing, but commitment to the wrong thing is just another form of self-sabotage. You have to know the difference between being dedicated and being stuck. If the only reason you're holding on is because of the time you've already spent, then you're not really making a decision, you're avoiding one. It takes courage to walk away from something that you've spent years building. It takes strength to admit that something isn't working. But the sooner you make that choice, the sooner you can start building something new. You can always make more money, find new relationships, create new opportunities, but you can never get back the time you spent staying somewhere you didn't belong. Sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking that if we just hold on a little longer, things will change. We tell ourselves, maybe next year will be different. Maybe if I try harder. Maybe if I just wait a little longer. But deep down, we already know the truth. We know when something is no longer right for us. We feel it in our bones. We just don't want to accept it because that means facing the unknown. But here's the thing. The unknown is where growth happens. The unknown is where new opportunities are waiting. You just have to be brave enough to step into it. If you've been telling yourself that you can't leave something just because of the time you've already spent, ask yourself this. If you were starting fresh today, would you choose this? Would you take this job? Would you enter this relationship? Would you chase this goal? If the answer is no, then that tells you everything you need to know. Just because you've already spent years on something doesn't mean you need to spend one more day on it. You don't owe your past anything, but you do owe yourself a future that makes you happy. You ever had that feeling deep down that something just isn't right? That quiet, nagging voice telling you, this ain't it. But instead of listening, you ignore it, justify it, or push it aside? That's your intuition, your gut, your inner wisdom trying to steer you in the right direction. The problem is, a lot of people hear that voice and still stay exactly where they are, afraid to face the truth. People don't like change. They don't like admitting that something they once wanted isn't what they need anymore, so they stay. They convince themselves that if they just work harder, wait longer, or adjust their expectations, things will get better. But deep down, they already know. The job that drains them, the relationship that no longer makes them happy, the dream they've outgrown, all of it carries a weight, and that weight keeps them stuck. It's easy to lie to yourself. It's easy to say, maybe I'm just being too emotional, or maybe I'm overthinking it. But your gut doesn't lie. Your heart doesn't lie. That heavy feeling in your chest, that lack of excitement, that exhaustion that won't go away, those are all signs. You can fake enthusiasm for a while, but you can't fake peace. And when something is right for you, you feel peace. When something isn't, you feel tension. A lot of people stay in situations that aren't meant for them because they don't want to start over. They convince themselves that what they have is good enough. But when did good enough become the goal? When did settling become the standard? People say, I don't want to throw away what I built. But if what you built is making you miserable, what are you really holding on to? The idea of something? The potential of something? If the reality of it isn't making you happy, then potential doesn't mean a thing. The hardest thing about walking away is the fear of the unknown. People would rather stay in a bad situation they understand than step into something they don't. Fear is the number one reason people don't listen to themselves. They hear that inner voice, they feel that pull in a different direction, but they hesitate because they don't know what's next. They ask themselves, what if I leave and regret it? What if I never find something better? What if I fail? But they never ask the opposite. What if I stay and regret it? What if something better is waiting for me? What if I succeed beyond my wildest dreams? The truth is, the thing you're scared to leave is already draining you. It's already making you feel small. It's already stealing your joy. So why are you afraid of what's on the other side? The worst that can happen is you get uncomfortable for a little while. But guess what? Growth is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. That doesn't mean it's wrong. Your intuition speaks in different ways. Sometimes it's exhaustion. You wake up every morning feeling drained before the day even starts. Sometimes it's resentment. You find yourself angry, bitter, frustrated, snapping at people for no reason. Sometimes it's lack of motivation. Things that used to excite you now feel like a chore. Sometimes it's just that quiet feeling you can't shake, that deep knowing that you're not where you're supposed to be. It's not always loud, but it's always there. People will tell you you're overreacting, or it's just a phase, or that's just life. But you have to be real with yourself. Not everything is just a phase. Not everything is supposed to be tolerated. And life is hard sometimes, but it's not supposed to feel like a constant battle against yourself. Think about how you feel when you're truly happy, when you're in the right place, doing the right thing, surrounded by the right people. It feels light. It feels natural. It feels like energy, not exhaustion. Now think about the thing you're afraid to walk away from. Does it make you feel that way? Or does it feel forced, heavy, like you're constantly convincing yourself to stay? If you have to keep forcing it, it's probably not meant for you. One of the biggest ways people ignore their intuition is by making excuses. It's not that bad. Other people have it worse. I should be grateful. And while gratitude is important, it should never be used as a reason to settle for less than you deserve. Just because someone else has it worse doesn't mean you have to stay in a situation that makes you unhappy. Comparison doesn't change your reality. Another way people ignore their intuition is by staying busy. They distract themselves with work, with social media, with other people's problems, anything to avoid facing their own truth. But the truth doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It waits, it lingers, and eventually it demands to be heard. Sometimes listening to yourself means disappointing other people. It means leaving a job that your family thinks is secure. It means ending a relationship that looks perfect on the outside. It means letting go of a dream you once had because you've grown into someone new. But you can't live your life based on what other people expect. At the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with your decisions. You're the one who has to wake up every morning and feel good about the life you're living. People talk about finding their purpose like it's some magical moment where everything just clicks. But most of the time, finding your purpose is just about listening to yourself. It's about noticing when something doesn't feel right and being brave enough to do something about it. It's about trusting that the things that no longer excite you, no longer bring you peace, no longer make you feel alive, those things are not meant for you. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to outgrow things. It's okay to want more for yourself. The hardest part is trusting that inner voice, even when you don't have all the answers yet. But the moment you stop ignoring what you already know, the moment you stop fighting against your own truth, that's the moment your life starts moving in the right direction.